A war might be breaking out between two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan. And if that happens, both China and the United States will have to jump in right quick to mediate this. Just 20 minutes ago, it was reported that India sent an airstrike into Pakistan over what happened in Kashmir a couple weeks ago. And that is what this conflict is about. India claims that they only struck terrorist sites and militant groups. Pakistan says that mosques and civilians were attacked. And Pakistan is delivering on their promise to retaliate if India decided to strike them. At face value, if you don't know the history between these two countries, it looks like war was declared. I mean, the Pakistani government has called this attack a blatant act of war, but it is too early to make that declaration. Both of these countries have been at war with each other since they both declared independence in 1947. The first was in 1947 over Kashmir. The second was in 1965 also over Kashmir, but the third was a little bit later in 1971, and that was more to collect Bangladesh and make it its own country. But since 1971, there have been almost a dozen armed conflicts between India and Pakistan involving airstrikes, artillery, yet it was not considered a war. Next two parts of this post are going to be the history of the squabble between Pakistan and India over Kashmir, and the third will be how this affects pretty much the entire world, with the two major power brokers of China and the US. While the immediate cause of this conflict comes from the most recent attack against Hindu tourists in Kashmir by potential Islamabad militants, we have to go back to when these two countries freed themselves from the British Empire and formed the two states, India and Pakistan. And in that same year, the region of Kashmir, which was once a princely state under the British Empire, chose neither to join with Pakistan or India. They wanted to be their own autonomous region. But that didn't last very long. While India is a majority Hindu country, they have had a very large Muslim population for centuries. In fact, until the British took over the entire subcontinent, Pakistan and India were ruled under the Mughal dynasty. And Kashmir is one of the regions that's been historically Muslim. And shortly after 1947, the historically Muslim majority did not want their Hindu ruler, Maharaja Hari Singh, to be in power. In order to keep his seat of power, he begged the Indian government to give him protection with the Indian army. They agreed upon the condition of including Kashmir as a part of India. Shortly after, the Indian military walked in to claim all of Kashmir, and that was the first India-Pakistani war. In 1962, India and China fought a border war, and parts of Kashmir went to China. So now there are parts of Kashmir which are administered and claimed by India, Pakistan, and China. To get a better understanding at how confusing this all is, please look at these 4 bullet points, A, B, C, and D. What makes this so tenuous is that India is not a big fan of China since China keeps trying to take some of their land. China is relying on Pakistan to be a buffer against Indian power. Pakistan loathes and despises India for their annexation of historically Muslim territory that they believe should go to their country, but they're friendly with China for doing the same exact thing, but also they owe China about $30 billion. And they rely heavily on China to be able to counter India as well. And then the United States is heavily reliant on both India and Pakistan, so they have to walk a very delicate tightrope. The US relies heavily on India to be a counter to China economically, militarily, but they also want to have a very strong economic relationship with this country for the sheer fact that they have such a large population that's also very young and contributes to a lot of intellectual white-collar work in the United States. India is right now the world's 4th largest GDP, even though they have the same population as China, which is the world's 2nd largest at 18 trillion. There is so much room for economic development in India, and if the United States is one of the first prime investors and recipients of benefits, then that will expand the American economy as well. And India's military heavily relies on the United States to monitor their border so they can stop any new potential Chinese incursions. And of course, they are welcoming the chance to being open to American markets and further economic development. But even though America is very chummy and reliant on India, they are also big friends with Pakistan. They rely on that country for a lot of counter-terrorism operations and information. And the United States, more than anything with Pakistan, wants to have this country on their side rather than China's. And then there's my own fact as to why the United States wants to stay friendly with Pakistan. When India begins to grow in power that rivals China and they want to start dictating their own terms, they will most likely want to start grabbing land like every other new powerful country. Pakistan will most likely be the United States' countermeasure to stop any kind of Indian overexpansion. But if a war is declared between these two countries, you could throw almost everything I've said out the window because the United States and China will be terrified. India going to war means a full mobilization and a huge investment into the military, and a militarized India is not something China wants to deal with. They also want to make sure that Pakistan can start paying its debt since they've already defaulted 3 or 4 times in the past 5 years. And if India defeats Pakistan and takes more land or causes just a great deal of instability, that ruins China's little ace in the hole against India. And the United States will be between a rock and a hard place, even more than China, if these two countries go to war. If America doesn't show enough support to India in a potential India-Pakistani war, that is just going to drive India into more of a commitment with the BRICS cooperative, in which they are trying to form their own, you could say, world economy outside the dollar. But if the United States shows too much favor to India, then they can lose a relationship with Pakistan and push them even deeper into China's arms. If India loses a war with Pakistan, which I believe is unlikely, that will only strengthen China's position in Central Asia. And if Pakistan loses the war with India, whether or not India gets America's help, won't that push them further into debt and a deeper relationship with China at the loss of the United States' influence? Best case scenario is that this attack that we're witnessing today is not a war, and the best case scenario for if a war takes place is that the United States and China settle whatever differences they have for the time being to orchestrate peace as quickly as possible. On a final note, if you guys think this is going to escalate to World War III, I highly doubt that, for the sheer fact that when India and China went to war in 1962, we were still going through the Vietnam War. There was still a lot of tension with Israel in the Middle East. There were at least a dozen conflicts going on all over the world, and the same thing was occurring when India was at war with Pakistan each of the 3 times. There's always at least a dozen or so conflicts taking place all around the world. It's just getting filmed much more now. I am the Geo Husar, and the world needs more wisdom, not war. Thanks for watching.